Hey everyone, this is Tammy Painter, and you're listening to the Book Owl Podcast, the podcast where I entertain your inner book nerd with tales of quirky books and literary lore. And also the podcast where I am just trying to get through this day after Election Day. And I am recording this on the 4th of November, so I'm making kind of a struggle to sound chipper, but I'll do my best. So a few episodes ago, we celebrated Agatha Christie's birthday, and I think that was episode 12 if you want to go back and give it a listen. But I figured it was time for another birthday party on the podcast. The problem is that November is apparently a good time for birthing an author because there are a huge number of writers that were born this month. So the trouble wasn't finding a topic, it was deciding which author is getting a birthday bash on the show. And because I'm recording this not long after Halloween, and perhaps I'm still a little bit in the Halloween spirit, I've chosen Bram Stoker as the Book Owl birthday boy this time around. But before we jump into the show, and while I give you time to scramble to come up with a present for Bram, I just wanted to give a huge thanks to Tierney for not only leaving some lovely comments on the Book Owl podcast blog, but also for leaving some kind words along with a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Hurrah! And just so you know, leaving reviews or even simply a 5-star rating does give the algorithms a little tickle. So if you have a few seconds and have been enjoying the show, please pop into whatever podcast app you're listening in right now and rate or review the show. Unless, of course, you're driving, then just, hold off and do it later, all right? Okay, so put on your cloaks and hop into your horse-drawn coach because we're going to Whitby, England. It's the 1890s, and the ship Dimitri, which has sailed from Varna on the Black Sea, is trying to pull into Whitby's harbor. There's a storm kicking up, and more than one vessel has already been lost to sea. But it seems the Dimitri is going to make it into port. Just before nightfall, a great cheer goes up at her sliding into the safety of the harbor. But during the night, a gale picks up, and the seas rise, and the ship runs aground. The force is so strong, the masts collapse, crashing onto the deck. Observers report seeing a black dog fleeing from the ship and charging up the slope to a nearby abbey. When the ruined ship can finally be inspected, it's discovered of the already small crew, only a handful have survived. And when questions are raised about the cargo of the ship, they find only a strange sandy dirt in the hold. Alright, if that sounds at all familiar, it's because it is one of the true stories that inspired Bram Stoker's most famous of his 15 novels, Dracula, which it turns out has more than one rather strange and mysterious event surrounding it. But let's start with Bram, or rather Abraham, Stoker. He was born on the 8th of November, 1847 in Dublin, Ireland. His dad, also an Abraham, was from Dublin, where he worked as a civil servant, and his mom, Charlotte, was from County Sligo on the western side of the island. Bram wasn't the healthiest of kids at the start and was actually bedridden pretty much until the age of 7. And I couldn't find out why, and it doesn't seem anybody really knows for sure what was wrong with him, which does seem a little strange given it wasn't all that long ago. But as he lay in bed, his mom would tell him stories that, might not have been completely age-appropriate for their scare levels. But somehow, Bram makes a full recovery, and he even ends up being quite the athlete when, from 1864 to 1870, he attends Trinity College, which does remind me that I need to cover that library on the podcast very soon. Anyway, he graduated, then went on to earn a master's degree in 1875. Bram, while it's not exactly clear what he studied, he bragged that he studied mathematics, but nobody can verify that. But anyway, he loved the theater, but he also knew he needed to earn a living. So, like dear old dad, he got a job in the civil service, and he worked in Dublin Castle. But while he was there, he also worked for free as a theater critic and wrote pieces for the Dublin Evening Mail. And now, these days, theater critics are kind of respected as journalists and maybe even treated a bit loftily. Well, that was not the case back then. Theater critics were thought of as the lowest form of journalists. But Bram showed the snobby people a thing or two because he wrote such eloquent and well thought out pieces. that readers, they really began admiring his work, and he improved the notion of what a theater critic could be. As if holding down 2 jobs wasn't enough, Bram was also writing short stories that got published, and he also published the god-awfully boring-sounding nonfiction tome, The Duties of Clerks in Petty Sessions in Ireland. And despite the dull name, the book was lauded by, well, the type of people who would bother to read something like that. Now, due to his work at the theater, Bram was meeting all kinds of characters, including Henry Irving, who comes to play a larger role in a bit, and Oscar Wilde. And at the time, I guess Oscar was trying to keep things under wraps because he, Oscar that is, was wooing a young woman by the name of Florence Balcom. Well, Team Bram came along and stole her right from under Oscar's nose, and the two, that would be Bram and Florence, not Bram and Oscar, got married in 1878. But because I'm guessing that Oscar wasn't all that terribly upset by losing Florence, the 3 maintained their friendship. Unfortunately, although Bram did seem pretty gaga for Florence at first, within a year of their being married, he ditched her for Henry Irving, who wanted Bram to come to London to manage his theater, the Lyceum. And let's just say that Bram idolized Henry, and the two became so close that almost anywhere Henry went in the world, so did Bram. During this time, Bram is also continuing to write, and by the mid-1890s, he's already published 4 novels. It's also in this time, and during his travels with Henry, that he meets a Hungarian traveler and writer who tells Bram tales of the Carpathian Mountains. And he tells Bram, who showed a great interest in the topic, that he should go to Whitby, England, to continue looking into the Carpathian strange history and legends. And he also mentions a certain book that Bram will find only in Whitby. So Bram goes to Whitby, heads to the library, and asks to see a book called The Accounts of Principalities of Wallachia and Moldavia. This was a rare book, and it was so rare that the library didn't let people know they had it. But Bram's Hungarian friend had told him about it, and told him exactly which pages to look at. So the librarian hands over the book, and as the librarian maintains a very close watch over Bram, he doesn't idly thumb through the book, just browsing as you do. Instead, he goes immediately to a specific section and begins making notes about the name Dracula, which in Moldavian means devil, and it was given as a surname to anyone known for exceptional cruelty. And I kind of like that they specify exceptional cruelty, like your everyday run-of-the-mill cruelty was okay. Anyway, Bram finishes his notes and heads over to the Whitby Museum to look at their collection of maps. It's here that he gets the exact longitude and latitude for the village that will house Dracula's castle. From the museum, Bram makes his way, this is like a total research trip, Bram makes his way to the harbor where he hears first-hand accounts of the demise of the ship Dimitri. As Bram is on this research trip to Whitby, Oscar Wilde is being tried for and convicted of lewd acts, which is a euphemism for being homosexual. The courts portrayed Oscar as a monster, as the most vile and draining pestilence on society. And it's this vile portrayal of his close friend that inspires Bram's most famous character. He literally begins writing Dracula only months after Oscar's conviction. So, Bram occasionally liked to get away from it all to a place called Cruden Bay in Scotland. And while he was writing Dracula, he decided to go there to, focus on his work. Nearby the town stood a castle called Slane's Castle, and this provided a visual cue for Dracula's castle, and many of the features of this real castle can be seen in the novel, which, has no point in Bram's life story, but it is a cool bit of trivia. Another thing that inspired Bram's tale was a visit to St. Michan's Church in Dublin, Ireland, where they have in the crypt some very lifelike corpses that would have been there for about a couple hundred years when Bram would have visited. And I have seen those bodies and have been in those crypts, and I will tell you they are a bit unsettling for how lifelike they still seem. Then again, the tour guide who takes you down there is almost just as unsettling, but that's another tale altogether. So if you've ever read Dracula, which is a pretty dense book, but also really good, you'll know it's written in the form of letters, and it's here you can really see Bram's previous work in journalism. Because he's spot on with noting realistic details, ship's logs, and the diary entries are just like people reporting on their daily, albeit very strange, lives. So Bram writes his book and sends it to his editor for publication. In the original version, Bram claims that all the events are real, and that Jonathan and Mina Harker are his close friends who brought him their diaries and newspaper clippings from the time period around the events. The editor did not like the idea of presenting the book as fact and rejected it, telling Bram to change it so it was more fictional. And to be fair, this was the late 1890s and London had just endured the Jack the Ripper mayhem, and the killer was still running loose. People might have been up for a scary story, but they didn't want that story to be anything but fiction. And the editor kind of worried that the book might cause a panic. The editor also decided the book was way too long. So in addition to changing many aspects of the text, Bram had to remove the first 101 pages of his book. And let me tell you, Dracula is already a long book. So the idea of getting through another 100 pages, I'm not sure if I could manage. Anyway, finally, the book was released in May of 1897 and ended up being pretty well received. And although somewhat popular and, it sold well, the book wouldn't gain a rabid readership until 1922 when the film Nosferatu came out. The film took the storyline from Dracula without getting any permission, and the legal fight that ensued ended up gaining the book so much notice it started selling like mad. And in the bonus feature in this episode's newsletter, I'll cover that fight a little bit more. So, moving along through Bram's life, in addition to managing Henry Irving's theater and writing for newspapers, he would go on to write another 8 novels, loads of short stories, and 4 more nonfiction books. As some of the homoerotic scenes in Dracula and his other books, and his own devotion to Henry Irving show, Bram did have a strong adoration of other men, but he repressed it heavily and even went so far in 1912 to demand all gay authors in Britain be put in prison. His overworking, the stress of his repression, and possibly a form of syphilis led to a series of strokes in that same year, and Bram ended up dying in London on the 20th of April in 1912. As for Dracula, this most famous of the undead and dozens of characters inspired by him continues to live on. But the actual manuscript of Dracula also can't be kept down. In the 1980s, the original manuscript was discovered in Pennsylvania. Why there? I could not find out. But the copy that was found does begin on page 102 with Jonathan Harker heading off on his ill-fated train journey. Which does make it strange to think that Bram, with 4 novels already under his belt and plenty of writing experience, didn't actually start the true action of his story until 100 damn pages into his book. I mean, clearly he wasn't reading any writing advice blogs that tell you to jump right into the action of the book. But anyway, what was on those first 100 pages? Supposedly you can garner clues from his notes and journals, but to see for yourself, you'll just have to wait until the pandemic's over and get to the Rosenbach Museum in Philadelphia, where the notes and journals are still stored to this day. So that's it for Bram. He seems to have had a successful life, but also a troubled one, and I do just have to wonder what he would make of sparkly vampires. As for updates regarding the podcast, I'm not entirely sure right now if I'm going to be doing a second episode this month, and it has nothing to do with the politics going on right now. The week I would be researching, writing, and recording, I've got a lot of life stuff going on, so I'm not sure if I'll have time to get an episode together, but we'll see. As for writing, I do have my own little vampire story called The Drive-Thru Window. It's not gory, and it's got a fair bit of dark humor, so if you want to check it out on my PayHip store, it's only 99 cents, and as always, I will have a link in the show notes for that. And other than that, I finished the first draft of book 3 of my Cassie Black Trilogy last week. Yes. I'm reading over all 3 books this week to see how they flow together and to make sure I don't have any major inconsistencies, which is a lot of reading in only a few days, but it's a bit icky out this week, so it's a good rainy day chore. Alright, my friends, that is it for this week. If you would like to help keep the show running, please visit thebookowlpodcast.com/support to see the very inexpensive options for keeping the microphone charged. And that's it for me, so I will hoot at you next time. The Book Owl Podcast is a production of Daisy Dog Media. Copyright 2020, all rights reserved. The theme music was composed by Kevin MacLeod. Audio processing by ophonic.com.